Cell phones. Some people love them, some people hate them. Most people love them, except for the iPhone 17. I don't think anybody likes that, but I digress. Just how do we get here to the cell phones we use today? I mean, they're pretty impressive, really, if you think about it. They're pretty small, and you can do just about anything you want to on there. But how do we get here? Allow me to take you to the year 1890, or at least sometime during the 1890s, I don't think anyone knows for sure, where an Italian guy named Marconi invented the first telegraph. I know you're probably thinking that isn't really having to do with cell phones or any kind of phones, but it actually is, because that was the first, at least first notable, wireless technology, and that kind of opened the doors for more wireless communication. Fast forwarding 20-ish years to the year 1911, where in Sweden the very first car phone was invented. Although it was super primitive, you actually, to use it, you had to stop your car, find a telephone pole, hook it up to the telephone pole, and then use it. Again, super primitive, but at least it was a start. And then less than 1 year later, in the year 1912, when the Titanic struck the iceberg, someone on the ship actually sent a distress signal to someone in the US telling them that they hit the iceberg. And that really kind of got people's attention, saying that, hey, maybe this wireless communication thing could have something to it, and that actually piqued a lot of people's interest. Less than 1 decade from that, in the 1920s, and this is often attributed to the Detroit Police Department, the very first radio telephone was invented and put into police cars. Although it did have a slight problem in that it was only one way. So the dispatcher could talk to the police officer, but the police officer couldn't call the dispatcher back.
Yeah, caught me one. What? Hello? Yeah, man!
Moving on to some more wireless technologies that was invented right around that same time, the walkie-talkie was invented by a Canadian government. And it was actually really useful in World War II because it was actually a wireless device that could be carried into the battle, you know, in case any of the soldiers need to actually relay any information. It was super useful and the first of its kind.
Team, we're taking heavy fire on patrol. Gas! We're too far out, I gotta go back. Go, I'll cover you.
By the 1940s, cars in St. Louis and New York City had a radio telephone service, but the problem was it was half duplex, meaning that only one person could talk at once. You couldn't have, you know, two people talking at the exact same time, and it could also only accommodate 12 different people.
Hello? Hey, hello? I can't hear you. What?
It was also super heavy. The equipment put into the cars weighed about 80 pounds. Right around this time in the 1940s, CD, or Citizen Band Radio, was just being invented, and it was really popular among truck drivers.
The farm truck is here's the duck. There's been a wreck out on 429. We had us a log truck turnover caught on fire. Old Billy Bob got trapped underneath and Luis had to save him. 10-4, hey, you Roger.
Also around this time, amateur radio, or ham radio, no one really knows why it's called ham radio, by the way. Fun fact, the origin is completely unknown. Ham radio actually started taking off, and although a lot of teens adopted it and it was very recreational, it also provided a public service, which is kind of cool. And it eventually, in the 60s, was developed to be mobile as well. So we're continuing to go on with that mobile drive and everyone wanting things to be more mobile. By the 1970s, actually most systems were full duplex finally, which remember I talked about half duplex just a minute ago. Most systems were full duplex, meaning that everyone could talk at once, but it was actually still very expensive and very heavy. Although the waiting lists were really long, so it did show that people had a pretty high demand for it. Also in the 1970s, telephone jacks came into play and was implemented in almost every room in the house, so you could have a phone in every room now. Pagers also came into play in the 1970s, and they were really, well, they took off mainly with doctors and plumbers, and later on teens, but this was a form of wireless communication that actually really did take off until the 90s really, and some of the features, even though pagers are kind of dead now and no one uses them, a lot of the things that were invented and made with the pager actually made it to the cell phones we use today. So texting, for instance, that kind of came out of pagers. Moving on to the 1980s, cordless phones actually came into play and went wide market, and people really liked cordless phones. They had a really small range, so if you stepped out of that range, you actually dropped the call. People really did like them though, and that really took off and really drove people towards the idea of wireless communication. You might be wondering, Logan, your shirt looks kind of different. What's up? Yes, it does. In 1947, Bell Labs actually come up with the first concept for the mobile phone and how it would function and be wireless. Essentially, clusters of base stations were spread all across a region, and when you got out of range of one cluster, it would pick up on the next. It did take a while to implement this though, and it actually went through a ton of delays, but by the mid-80s, over 600,000 people actually had cell phones. Although most were actually installed in cars, and they were very heavy, very expensive, and didn't really have a long battery at all. The battery life was typically around 20 minutes. The quality of the service also wasn't really comparable to wired telephones, even in the 21st century. The quality just wasn't as good, and a lot of people had a problem with that. A lot of people canceled, a lot of people decided to wait till later to jump on it, and a lot of people switched providers.
Hello, may I help you?
Yeah, you could take that thing back, because I'm done. The service is awful, the phone is awful, I can't do a thing with it. I'm changing providers. At least for now.
A lot of people were very much so interested in the mobile phone though, and they were really happy about it because it gave them a personal experience that they didn't ever have before with phones. A good example is party lines. On party lines, as long as you're in the same household, you can pick up the phone, and if someone is already on the phone, you can just listen into their conversation, and it wasn't private or personal at all. Now with mobile phones, it was a personal experience. It was your phone, and especially with prepaid plans, you only had to pay for what you needed to use. By the 1990s, mobile phones had taken off. It's funny to actually think about, but from the point they were available, only 16 years had passed between then and over half of the houses in America adopting cell phones. It was actually one of the fastest, if not the fastest, growth of communication in all of history. The adoption of mobile phones were driven by three main factors: availability of the phones, decrease in size of the phone, and decrease in price of the phone. I'm going to give you a specific circumstance in the 1990s, right when phones were actually really taking off, that really proves how much people enjoyed them and how it actually benefited everyone's life. I read a story about a repairman who actually had a landline phone with an answering machine, and his name was in the yellow pages, so people could just look up him as a repairman if they needed a repairman. And people would look him up, call him, but when they found out he wasn't actually available right then, he got voicemails, but as soon as he goes to hear them, he actually just heard clicks, because no one actually wanted to wait and, have him get back to them. They wanted instant answer. They wanted someone there ready to fix their problem immediately. And he actually, keeping in mind, cell phones were a little bit expensive back then, not that they're not today, but they were really expensive then. And he actually did buy one, and it helped him out a whole lot actually. People then could just immediately contact him, and it helped his business out tremendously. and that really kind of makes up for the high price because he got way more customers. Another interesting point to note is that when mobile phones first came out, it was mainly men that adopted them, and that was mainly for occupational reasons, such as emergency work or just work on the field. Later on, women did adopt them, and it was most notably for security reasons. During the 1990s, mobile phones were perceived as lifelines in case someone was in a bad situation, or their car broke down, or they just didn't feel like they were safe. I read one story about a woman who had an elevator phobia, and her problem wasn't actually getting stuck in the elevator. Her problem was that she couldn't call anyone if she did get stuck. And with a mobile phone, she now could call people, and that actually helped eliminate the fear entirely. By the late 1990s, many U.S. parents started giving cell phones to their teenagers and their children just to kind of keep tabs on them and to know they're safe. With the start of a new century, safety and security became a really big motivation for people actually buying cell phones. It was at this point that people actually started to bring their mobile phones with them more everywhere they went. People started bringing them to work. People started bringing them to the dinner table. People started to really develop that drive for connectivity. And it was also at this point where connectivity almost became an obsession. Mobile phones help people feel in control of their lives, no matter where they are, and that gives them a sense of power. And for many people, they have to have their phones on them at all times to feel that power, to feel connected. Many users, myself included, often leave their phones at night on their nightstand right beside their bed or on a table right beside their bed, often hooked up to chargers. That way, at any point in the night, if someone needed to get a hold of them, they could. It's that sense of connectivity, that 24/7 connectivity that drives people to buy mobile phones and to keep them. People can be available anytime, anywhere. When mobile phone service was more expensive, usage was more deliberate. People only called each other when they had a specific message to convey. As the price dropped, people started to call each other for less and less important reasons, just to maybe catch up. This change has helped mobile phones become a regular habit for millions of users. People previously maintained groups through fixed location calling or even physical contact. Cell phones kind of expanded that and really helped groups stay together. Moving on from socializing, we've also learned how to multitask on our phones. Examples include eating, surfing the web, reading, shopping, doing the dishes, watching TV, and walking. Among others, people also drive while on their phone, and some people even text. Driving is often described as free time to catch up, make phone calls, or listen to the radio. A lot of people like to multitask and get a lot of things done while they're driving. If you can be on the phone getting other things done while you're driving, you're doing 2 times the work in just the normal amount of time you would just be driving. At the same time, this offers us distractions, and distractions end up in wrecks. There's no question though, multitasking on our phones actually really do help us in our daily lives. When people are simply walking down the street, running errands, or shopping, they're available to do double duty with cell phones. That way they can actually get things done. And it actually is very efficient. Alright, moving on to the negatives. Examples include individuals who spoke too loudly, inappropriate places to make calls, and topics people didn't want to hear.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, it's still there. It's just not going away. Yeah, like the rash, it's getting worse. It's actually getting worse. Like legit, I don't know how. It's like, it's just horrible.
Specific examples include those who use cell phones in public restrooms,
No, that's fine, really. No, it's fine. I'm just in the bathroom.
and those who use their cell phone while in line, thus holding up the entire rest of the line while they're trying to check out.
We just, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're good, I promise. Oh, really?
People also have the problem of talking about very personal topics while in public, and they don't even realize it. They get so absorbed in the phone call that they don't realize other people can hear intimate details. Not only is there negatives for those around the mobile phone user, but there's also annoyances for those using the mobile phone, such as use in a very loud public place. Although many just accept the noise and just deal with it even if parts of the conversation are lost, some conversations are so loud that they actually have to have them repeat what they said because they can't hear them at all. Mobile phone microphones pick up noise from all directions. So even though that might be a big problem for those in the public place, it's actually a bigger problem for the person outside of the very loud place. When first introduced, the mobile phone was simply a device for making phone calls. During the 1990s, a few features were added, such as a contact list and clock, but from the late 1990s through the early 21st century, however, a slew of applications appeared. Younger people generally are more open to the idea of mobile phones as multiple application devices. Older people are likely to view them as phones, though many are open to some extra features. At the other end of the spectrum are owners of advanced and well-designed smartphones with thousands of applications available to them. They spend a ton of time on their phones, but calling is just one activity for them. They spend more time texting, surfing the web, checking email, playing games, and watching videos. For a lot of people, the smartphone is a replacement for a laptop computer. One of the most intriguing applications that have become a habit of millions of users is texting. Many constraints hindered the widespread adoption of texting. It was difficult to enter messages with the limited number of keys on a typical mobile phone. Many people had difficulty learning thumb typing and found its regular use annoying. Older people had trouble reading messages on small mobile screens. All of these constraints were overcome for the legion of users led by teens who adopted texting. Just what is the attraction of texting? Why do people love it so much? In addition to low cost, a lot of people just find it convenient. For example, it can be used in situations that would maybe be inappropriate or embarrassing to make or receive voice calls. Texting also provides greater privacy for the user. That attribute is actually probably why more teens adopted it than anyone expected. With this level of privacy, teens can make or receive text messages late at night without parents overhearing conversations. Texting can also be used in classrooms where it's undetected by teachers. Moving on to another very, very important application of phones, or at least semi-modern cell phones, is that of camera integration. The camera, funny enough, was actually a feature that is a good representation of something no one ever really wanted, but we got it anyway. Think we should put a camera in it?
No.
I'm gonna do it anyways. Cameras were built into phones simply because the technology existed. That's the only reason. People ended up actually getting these camera phones not because they wanted them, but just because it was time to replace their phone. And when they come to replace their phone had a camera on it. People saved photos to view later or show friends, emailed them to family members, and posted them on social networking sites or used them as wallpaper backgrounds for phone displays. Phones actually served as a replacement for digital cameras. And over time, as the quality of the photos increased, some people really did just use their phone as a camera. People still do. People are continuing to do that more and more. And finally, moving on to the many uses and the multitude of apps available today that wasn't even available 5 years ago. Examples include buying tickets at movie theaters and using phones as electronic tickets, and using phones to read barcodes in stores. Some people can, essentially not leave their house anymore because of their phone. Instacart, for example. It's a grocery delivery service that you can do all on your phone. Someone goes out to the grocery store, you tell them what you need. You don't even have to actually tell them. You just click a box on what you need. They'll go get it and bring it to your door. You don't even have to leave your house anymore. Uber is also a great example of mobile phone usage. It's an app where you can just get a car to come to your house and take you wherever you need to go, all on your phone.
Oh, sweet, my Uber's here. I don't like this.
So where do we go from here? Well, based on all the signs, we continue to go forward. We continue to progress and innovate and make cell phones the best they can be. Some will be quick to adopt the changes, while others will be hesitant and maybe never adopt them at all. Either way, cell phones aren't going anywhere.